Hey, what's up? It's Comic95, the Savior. So, for this video, I want to talk about something that I've already touched on in the past, but I feel that it's necessary to redo this video. And I guess not really to redo, but kind of to add more stuff. So I've actually answered most of what I'm going to talk about in this video, or shall I say I've said it, in the comments, as well as, people that have private messaged me and or sent emails. I have pretty much already shared this information, but I figured that I should make it public so that other people, don't have to ask me this question. And for those that are too shy, don't have the time, or whatever the case may be, maybe you just didn't think I was going to reply to your email, I want to give advice right here. So, this video is obviously, as the title says, is for non-native English speakers. If you are not sure who qualifies as a non-native English speaker, I will give you that information right now. So a non-native English speaker is someone who was not born and raised in a country, which, the national, whatever you want to call it, language that's already been decided for that country is English. Now, there are some countries that have English as one of their main languages. For example, Malaysia. But unfortunately, even although Malaysians generally speak English, a lot of them, if not all, at a native English level, they are not considered as native speakers. Native speakers are people that come from places such as the United States, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, and New Zealand. However, the two, or shall I say three, preferred countries are really the UK, Canada, and the United States, with New Zealand and Australia being very close, neck and neck. But in general, those are the big five countries when people say they're looking for native English speakers. Now, of course, I'm well aware that people from Jamaica, South Africa, and various other countries within Africa and even in Europe speak English at a native level, and that is their language. For example, in Jamaica, they only speak English. That is their language. But of course, I know there's always the exception to the rule. It's more like, oh, actually, Jamaicans. Just stay with me, people. Anyway, my point is, these are what they consider as native English speakers. Even if you do speak English better than or at the same level as an American or whatever else, you will have a very hard time getting hired if you are not from one of these five countries. Now, do also keep in mind that when they say from these countries, they don't care that you got your education in the US or in Canada. Now, some jobs might care if you live here. It can put you a step ahead. But if you're applying from overseas, they don't care that you went to college in the US. If you were not born in America, you are not a native English speaker, is the way that they see it. It's technically comical because, of course, we all know that you can very much indeed be born in the USA and not be a native English speaker. You might be an immigrant and you might speak with an accent. You might not necessarily have been there your whole life. So there's so many different things to that, and I'm not going to get dragged off into that, but I'm simply explaining who is. If you are an Asian American, yes, you are considered as a native English speaker as long as you were born and raised in the USA. I've had people that are of Asian descent, they're like, oh, I'm Chinese, but I was born and raised in America, so, they think that they need this advice. This advice is not for you. You might have challenges getting a job for other reasons based off of your appearance being Asian, but in general, most employers won't really care. In fact, you'll be an easier employee because you have the appearance of an Asian, because you are Asian, or shall I say, the appearance of a Japanese person, without actually necessarily being Japanese. So even if you are Japanese American, again, in Japan, you're not really considered as Japanese unless you were born and raised here. They have special words to describe people like you. I'm not getting into the whole political, what you are type thing. I'm simply explaining how you're going to be viewed. So even if you're Japanese, Chinese, Filipino, whatever, if you're American, you're American. It does not matter what race you are. You are a native speaker. That's all you need to know. So, now that we've gotten that out of the way, the next term that you need to become familiar with beyond just native speaker is native fluent. So I've touched on this before, and I think I said that earlier in this video too, but the term native fluent speaker basically means that you speak English so well, it sounds like you are a native English speaker, but you are not. This is someone that was not born in the US, but you probably studied English extensively. Maybe you studied abroad for a year or two, maybe you've lived in America for 10 plus years, maybe you're married to an American or whoever, or maybe you just really love Netflix and American movies and music. Please excuse me, my voice got hoarse. I had to drink some water. But anyway, so yeah, a native fluent speaker is someone that speaks English fluently. You can speak slang, you probably understand very well, you can get English jokes, you can talk quickly, you can understand quickly, you're on your feet. You're not someone who has to keep asking, oh, what did she say? Can you say that again? One more time, please? No. You probably speak more grammatically correct English and write better than an actual American does. You are someone that they consider as a native fluent speaker. So in general, the jobs that will hire people that aren't native speakers, so non-native speakers, are generally eikaiwas. They normally don't care about whether you're a native speaker or not when it comes to conversational lessons with businessmen that or people that like to travel for leisure, or young students, more so the younger students. Adults and high school students, etc., generally their parents or the student themselves, if they're an adult, they will request to have a native speaker, and they won't even bother to pay for someone who is not an American at that, but at least be a native speaker. So for example, even if they're planning to go to Australia or the United Kingdom, they will almost always still pay an American because they'd rather have your accent since it's universal. And beyond just that, like I said, most Japanese people can't understand those other two accents, so they feel like it's a waste to learn how to talk this way and then only be able to use it within that country. So eikaiwas are generally the best choice for you. Eikaiwas are basically conversational English schools where people take lessons from anywhere from 30 minutes to about an hour long, and in rare cases about 2 hours. But most lessons will generally be between 50 minutes to an hour. And in these lessons, you will literally just freely talk to your students about anything. It can be about the news, media, whatever. You would normally have books provided for you. These jobs generally only require that you are a native, they only require that you speak English at a native fluent level. You do not have to be a native English speaker. But the problem is that most of these jobs do not sponsor visas from overseas. They will only help you renew your visa once it gets close to expiring. They will not sponsor from the start, and they will not they won't even interview you from overseas. So overseas applications are generally not okay for these jobs, but sometimes they are. That's your number one best choice. Your second choice for getting a job here in Japan is, of course, through connections. You would be amazed. For example, there are a lot of people here from the Middle East, such as, Turkey, as well as South Asia. So people that come from places like India. If you have connections within these countries, you can generally find cultural centers, etc. in your home country in which they have some sort of connection with Japan. Through these cultural centers or through these people that you meet at these places, you can actually get an interview and land a job here in Japan doing work that you are not qualified for, and it's technically illegal, but it's legal in Japan. But in my country, this would be wrong. But it happens in America too. For example, you'll see at companies where everybody, all of the staff is Hispanic, or all of the staff is Filipino or whatever, because, people know each other and they hire, their relatives, or they hire, people based off of their race. It does happen. Well, that happens in Japan too. You will find whole companies that aren't based off of, whatever. So for example, I'm not just talking about some curry restaurant where it will be obvious why the staff is Indian. But I mean, it'll be a school, and it's why are all of the teachers here Filipino, and this is an American English school? So that's a whole nother story, and I'm trying to get into a whole little race war with you guys. But my point is, if you meet people from your country, or you meet people that live in Japan from your country, you become friends with them, use them to level up in the field, you can actually get an interview and land a job this way. You can also get a position in which you are getting paid a lot more money than even English teachers. I've worked at several companies like this. I know people that have done this. Again, I'm not going to hold your hand and give you all the answers. You guys have to do some research yourself. I don't know everything, but I'm telling you what I've personally seen. I am a native speaker and I am American, in case you don't already know that and can't hear that. So I can't really help you out that much. I can only tell you what I've seen, heard, and what I know of. So yeah, do not doubt connections. I'm not saying it in a generic way. I'm being dead serious and honest with you. There are literally thousands of people living and working in Japan that, are not qualified for their positions, but simply because they met someone that was from Turkey that lives here, and they met someone that was from India that lives here, they were able to get a job here without even having to get into a sham marriage. And they were hired based off of the fact that, hey, I want to hire somebody else from Turkey. I know the difficulties of getting jobs in Japan, blah, blah, blah. Or I want to hire, one of my fellow Indians, whatever type thing. So that's the way that it goes here. So that's another, method to think of in order to get here. Find companies that, have connections with places in your home country. Do some Google searches on that. Again, you will still need a degree. It's a requirement from immigration. So even if your friend wants to hire you, you generally still have to have that degree, or they have to be willing to, somehow find a way for you to meet that point system, which is difficult to do, but it's possible. But generally, immigration rejects these applications. So anyway, if you're asking me for advice, I highly recommend you come to Japan as a college student, even if you already have a degree. If you're really that desperate, I recommend still going back to school, maybe work on your master's, your doctorate degree, whatever. Find a job while you're here on that visa that can help support you and that will sponsor, a visa that will allow full-time work, so that can help you change your visa status or resident status to working, so you can get a work visa. That's your best case scenario. That's what I would recommend doing. Otherwise, it's pretty much impossible to find a job that's going to sponsor your visa from overseas. Some companies do hire non-native speakers from overseas, but it's very, very limited. There's a very small pool of jobs that do. And generally the jobs that do hire from overseas, they're crooked. They're not going to pay you much money, and you're going to want to quit. And while sure you can quit and work another job, the problem is you're going to have trouble finding another job that's, one, going to hire you, and two, one that's going to actually sponsor your visa once the one you're on runs out. I won't have that problem. When my visas do run out, I can easily find another employer. I might not necessarily love the company, but at least it's possible for me to stay here. As a non-native speaker, even if you're willing to do the dirtiest of work and you don't care, people really just don't want to hire you. So it doesn't matter how desperate you are for work. It's hard to find any kind of work, because the jobs that do hire, they don't sponsor visas at all. And it's, dirty work, like literally cleaning toilets type stuff. And they generally will only hire people from the Philippines that are living in Japan on spouse visas. That's the way that it goes. So again, I'm not saying that it's fair. It's not everyone. There's exceptions to every rule. But the reality is you kind of have to already be in Japan in order to find work with ease. There's nothing that you can say to your employer through your email, through your resume, whatever, that will make them hire you. You can sell yourself to them. You can make yourself, more, likable, more whatever in your resume. But there's nothing that you can really do, like once your resume has already been sent. The best thing for you to do is to shut your mouth and leave your employer alone. They don't need to be reminded that you sent in your resume. If anything, you're going to aggravate them. Not to mention that you really want to work on your English. Please stop trying to use slang to sound cool, seem relevant, whatever, because a lot of the emails that you guys send me asking me for advice, I can tell right away that you're not a native speaker because it's written so weird. You're using weird stuff like best regards, dear, and just saying really weird crap, and it's yeah, they're probably not going to call you back. So if you can't even sound like a native speaker when talking to me, I know you didn't do well in your interview. The time for you to shine is to show them how well you can put together an English demo lesson. You really want to work on your accent, you want to work on your presentation skills, and your creativity. Those are the things that matter the most. Not all employers are very strict, but again, when dealing with overseas applications, they're going to be interviewing hundreds of people. More than likely, they're going to find hundreds of people that are a lot better than you. If you are a domestic applicant, it's significantly easier to get a job as a non-native speaker. It's still hard because, again, they'd rather have a native over you, but now you're dealing with a lot less applications. There aren't as many people to compete with, but from overseas, there's a lot more. So again, that's why I say it's easier if you come here on another type of visa and simply change your status of residence at a later time. It's the easiest method to get here. It does cost money, but again, that's the way that most people really do it legitimately. Otherwise, the other people that are here working in Japan, they're either married to someone that got a job in Japan at some foreign company, so they're on a dependent visa, or they're in some sort of sham marriage or legitimate marriage, whatever the case may be. That's how they got their visa to work here. Oftentimes, these foreigners also lie and exaggerate how much they're getting paid or where they're working at too. They normally work some sort of customer service job or some sort of retail job. So they're either working at 7-Eleven or they're working at some type of hotel doing, cleaning, or some family restaurant or something like that. The other foreigners are working, IT jobs sometimes, and some type of office-like job or whatever. These jobs do require degrees, and you generally have to already have visa sponsorship. So these are jobs you can get after you've already come here, not a job that's going to sponsor your visa from overseas. Can you find a job that will sponsor your visa from overseas? Yes, for these types of jobs that are not for teaching English, but it's extremely rare, and you generally also have to have a high level of Japanese proficiency on top of English and a degree. Which by the time you go through all of that, is it even worth it to come to Japan just to get $20,000 a year? Your employer is not stupid. They know that you are not a native English speaker. So, if they are interested in hiring people who are not native English speakers, they will get back to you. If they are not interested, they will not get back to you. And there's nothing that you can say, there's nothing that you can do that will make them change their mind. They've already made their minds up about you. So if you've gone days, weeks, months, whatever without hearing back, they're not interested. Do not stalk them. Do not call them. Do not send follow-up emails. They will not forget you. If they see a beautiful face and they had a great interview with you or they loved your resume, whatever, they will get in contact with you. Trust and believe. If they did not like what they saw, they did not like what they heard, they did not like what they read, they couldn't understand it, they were like, girl, like there ain't no way you a native speaker. Or boy, like, we can tell that you're a creep. You're not going to hear back from them. There's nothing you can say and or do that will change their mind. And unfortunately, once again, most places do not hire non-native speakers because there's already more than enough native speakers to, inside their applicant pool. Why would they want to go for you? And generally the places that do hire non-native speakers, they generally pay them significantly less money because they can. Also, as I've said before, getting off of the whole subject of that, onto some more lighter stuff about getting a job, so to speak. As far as actual work here goes for those that aren't native speakers, they generally are working here on spouse visas, which is how they got their job. But again, just as I said to my native speakers, do not be fooled. A spouse visa does not guarantee you a job. It guarantees you the right to legally live and stay in Japan, which is more than likely your goal. So if that's the reason why you want to work in Japan, well then, I ain't recommending that you do that, but I am saying that that's kind of the way that other people have done it to get here that are not native speakers. Do not be fooled though, as I was saying, having that visa does not give you a job. They will still rather hire someone that is a native speaker, and they would also rather hire a native speaker with a degree. A lot of people that are native speakers here have, spouse visas, and they still struggle to get work. Good work, that is. Why? Because they don't have a bachelor's degree. Pretty much every job here, except for retail stores, require it. And the ones that don't require it, they prefer it. They don't care what it's in. They will hire somebody that has a degree in, whatever science to work at a convenience store over you, even although you have a spouse visa. That's just the way that it goes. So generally people that, aren't native speakers, their only goal is to learn Japanese and become, so good at it that they're at a near native level in Japanese and in English, because generally speaking, they want you to be, bilingual. Really, you be trilingual, because whatever your language is in your home country, they want you to at least be, a near master at Japanese to get these jobs, and you'll get the same pay as a teacher. So even although you worked your butt off, you spent lots of money, lots of time, you're going to either get paid the same amount, if not less, than that stupid American that, only knows English, that has no professional anything, but just because of where they were born, they're going to get paid more than you and get the job that you want. That's just life. So anyway, non-native speakers generally get the jobs that they do have through their spouse visa. These people do not generally come from overseas with jobs. They come into Japan as students, or they come here and they get into a sham marriage, is how it goes. Anyone telling you otherwise is more than likely a liar. It's very, very rare that these people can get visas based off of the point-based system for being a highly skilled worker. Generally, the people that have gone through and done it this way, they have lied on their, application, which means that they're risking deportation. And beyond just that, these people generally get found out. You can literally read news articles about people getting deported for, getting fake visas approved here, whether it be sham marriages or lying about their credentials, etc. So I do not recommend going that route. Just come to Japan, do it the right way. Go to school, graduate, and find a job. You'll find it a lot easier to get, full-time work here legally if you go to Japan as a college student, graduate in Japan, and then find a job that way. Of course, though, you cannot slack like how native speakers can. You have to focus on your Japanese because it's very unlikely that you'll get a job otherwise. Can you work here and get a normal English teaching position just like a regular native speaker? Yes, you most certainly can. I've worked side by side with non-native speakers, but in general, non-native speakers do the assistant jobs. So they work as the Japanese assistant, basically. So basically, you're not teaching, you're assistant. You're doing the dirty work. You change the diapers, you clean the floors, and you get paid about half of what the native speaker does because you're the assistant. It's not fair, but that's the way that it goes. So anyway, not to contradict myself, I'm sorry if I scared you away, but my point is you want to emphasize on, the fact that you speak at a native level. You want to talk about any experience that you've had teaching, in a foreign country or teaching English in your home country. If you've done any teaching in Japan, you really want to emphasize on this stuff. Aside from that, it's very important that you have a very good resume photo. You don't want your picture to come off as creepy or sexy or anything like that. You want it to be professional and appropriate for Japan where you can clearly be seen. You also want to make sure, especially if you're a non-native speaker, that you look Japanese. I'm not telling you to look Japanese, try to make your eyes slanted and Photoshop the crap out of your picture. No, I mean you want to look clean and polished Japanese. You want to look like a real salaryman. So if you can, it would be really nice if you can wear a nice black and white suit. And if you are a man, and I hope you don't have this problem if you're a woman, you probably want to shave your face. They do not want to see a whole 6-foot long beard and all the type of crap going on. Please shave your face, get rid of piercings, make yourself look nice, clean, groomed, polished, and professional. Can you get a job while looking like a piece of crap? Can you get a job with a 400 megapixel photo? Yes, you most certainly can. But again, it will be best if you put your best foot forward and try to make yourself look as nice, clean, and polished as possible. You're already, all of the odds are against you. I hate to be negative, I'm just being real. You're applying from overseas. There's tons of foreigners that are native speakers that are applying for this job. There's tons of foreigners that are native speakers with degrees that are applying for this job that are actually relevant. And here you are, you come from a country that's not preferred, you're not a native speaker, and your degree probably isn't even in education. You have pretty much everything against you at this point. And if you're not blessed with good looks, it's gonna be even harder for you. Now, aside from having a great photo, you really want to make sure that your resume is free of errors. You don't want your resume to go on and on and on and have unnecessary, information inside of there, or list, you, your mama, whoever's phone number. They don't need all of that type of stuff. Just list any relevant work that you've done. Keep it short and simple and explain what your duties were for that job. I said duties, haha, whatever. Just keep it very simple. Don't overdo it. You want to make sure that you stay on track, that you're staying focused. You don't want to be all over the place with your resume. It should be clear and easy for them to read, and it should also look and or be professional. If you're not sure how to make a resume, I highly recommend you do a Google search on it. Literally copy and paste the template, fill in your own information, and you can literally send it out to every single employer. Be sure to update it as you get new jobs. Also, keep in mind that for your resume, you do not, or your cover letter too, do not cry and whine about why you love Japan or why you want this job. That is a total turn off, for lack of a better word, for an employer. When I see resumes like that, because that's part of my job to help with hiring, I trash them. You want to know why I trash them? Because they're not professional. They're stupid. And they show me that you're not serious about being here in Japan and that your goal is to be here in Japan. Yes, we get it. The reason why you apply for this job is obviously because you like Japan and not because you want to be a teacher. Because how many people here actually have degrees in education? How many people here actually want to be a teacher? Not many. There are a few, I'm one of them, but that's like the exception to the rule. The reality is most people are teaching in Japan because it's convenient and it's easy. That's cool, but I don't want to hire somebody that I can't explain it. It's an unwritten rule. Yes, we know that's why you're doing this, but you're not supposed to really say that. And it's beyond just you admitting that that's the reason why you're applying for this job. Your whole demeanor, your goal, your mindset, it's creepy. That's the best way I can put it. It's not just me. This is what other employers do too. Most people will not reply back to that. It sounds childish. You haven't woken up, smelled coffee. You seem to be living in a whole nother little world. Like you haven't found reality yet. And you're not the type of person someone wants to hire. So I highly recommend that you don't, say, oh, please hire me. I love Japan so much. I've been practicing Japanese for 5 years. I love Naruto. I love cosplay. Like, stop. That's not how this works. So aside from that, the other important thing that you really want to keep in mind, beyond just, avoiding saying creepy stuff like that and trying to, pitch yourself to them in that type of way, you want to understand that there is nothing that you can really do to convince your employer that your English is so great. You have to do that. And that's kind of the whole purpose in your resume, cover letter, personal statement, and the whole demo lesson interview process. That's your time to shine. I also don't say this just to stroke your ego, but being totally realistic, being attractive really does go a long ways here in Japan. It's a totally different country and culture. People will hire you based off of your appearance. I've seen people work jobs, and including myself, get positions for stuff they definitely were not qualified for, but because your employer thought you were attractive, they gave you the job. I can now speak Japanese well enough. But realistically, when I first came to Japan, I didn't speak a lick of Japanese, and I got several jobs right off the bat just because the employer thought that I was cute, and I looked a lot more busted than I do recently. So yeah, that says a lot. And I saw people that spoke a lot better than I did that couldn't find jobs and or that struggled a lot more. Unfortunately, being a native speaker is kind of associated with being a professional. You can be a native, most certainly you can be a native speaker and suck at English. You might be horrible with, English grammar. You might be a bad speller. You might, not know how to talk properly. Everyone was not born and raised in the same place in the same way. We all come from different households. We all attended different schools. We all had different grades. None of this stuff is considered. In Japan, they're like, oh my God, American, hired. That's pretty much how it goes. And whereas for you as a non-native speaker, whether you are from Europe, whether you're from South America, Africa, Asia, wherever, if you are not from one of those 5 countries, it's assumed that you don't know what you're talking about and that people just don't want to learn from you. And I won't lie to you and stroke your ego and say, oh, it's just the schools. No, to be honest, the parents and even adult students have been brainwashed into thinking this way as well. There is a huge emphasis and a gigantic demand for native speakers because native speakers generally don't stay in Japan very long. The pay here sucks. It's garbage in comparison to our home countries. And on top of that, we're not normally as desperate to get these jobs because we have so many job options. We've never really had to fight for them. Whereas non-native speakers, they have to constantly fight and work hard to get just an interview. So when they get these jobs, they generally don't quit. And on top of that, I would arguably say that non-native speakers spend a lot more time studying Japanese and working on their resumes and trying their hardest to get here. So they care a lot more about staying here in Japan. I feel, in my opinion, native speakers are more like, I'll come back another time, get another job, they get married, they're just here for a good time. They don't really care so much about the work aspect. Not to say that non-natives don't do the same thing, but I will say that I do believe that non-native speakers make better teachers. They work harder, and I think they care more about their students overall, but I think it's also mainly because they have no choice but to in order to get these jobs and or keep them, so they're more grateful for them. This is not to say that all native speakers are bad people. I would like to think that I'm not, but I'm just being realistic about what most people kind of do here. So the reality is that most parents will actually pull their kids out of the program in school. I've seen it happen if the native speaker teacher gets replaced by a non-native because they don't want to pay that much money for someone who doesn't even speak English at a native level. They don't care how blonde your hair is, how blue your eyes are, how cute you are. They're not going to pay for you. They would rather pay for the, fat, ugly, sloppy guy to teach, but he's American, so they don't care. They want that teacher. They want the accent. They want their children to speak with perfect English accents. They don't want to learn from someone who not only doesn't know everything as far as English goes, but that will basically teach them how to have their accent. That's what they don't want. Japanese people are perfectionists overall, and the last thing that they want is for people to not be able to understand them and or to be teased. This is another reason why Americans generally take, I won't say, for lack of a better word, priority, they're preferred, so to speak, over people from other countries. So for example, when it comes to hiring, Americans are like the golden applicant. People don't normally understand British or Australian English here. It's very hard for Japanese ears to understand and pick up those words. I didn't even think about that until I came here. I will say that I can admit sometimes I do have trouble understanding Aussies and Brits too, but not so much to the point where I'm like, all the time. Here, if you speak British or Australian English, a lot of people cannot understand a word that you just said unless you're able to fake an American accent or unless your accent just isn't that strong. But for the most part, they can understand that English, and they generally cannot tell the difference between Aussie English and, British English. They both sound the same to most Japanese people. So this is a big reason why Americans are even preferred over them. But we're not talking about native speakers. I'm talking about non-native English speakers in this video. Do not think that your test scores matter. There's no certain score that you need to have to prove whether you are native fluent or not. Obviously, if you test very well, there's a high chance that you are a native fluent speaker, but you might be someone that tests poorly but speaks very well. For example, my boyfriend, he sucks at testing. His TOEIC score is horrible. He's not just dating an American. I mean, he studied English, he majored in it. But even although that was his major, he went to school for that, he has a degree in it, and again, he's not just dating an American. I am an English teacher. He still just doesn't test well. It's just not his strong point. Now, he hasn't tested since we've been dating, so I have no idea if being with me has impacted his score, because I have, studied with him. But honestly, we haven't spent a lot of time with that. Normally, he's busy helping me with Japanese or he's working. But that's a whole nother story. My point is, do not think that you have to test well in order to qualify for being a native fluent speaker. It's something that only you know and the people around you will know. So for example, if you were to interact with someone like me, more than likely if you're able to watch my video and you can keep up with how fast I'm talking and you're not using subtitles, which these subtitles are actually pretty good, but they're sometimes wrong too, of course. If that is the case, you probably are a native fluent speaker if you're not finding yourself having to Google what I'm saying or use subs or read the bottom of the screen. You probably can understand very well, and you probably in turn also speak well. So that's my point. Now, do not get this wrong. Being native fluent does not mean that you talk ignorantly. I think a lot of people have the wrong idea, just like how Japanese students do, and they associate being native with being someone that speaks rudely and constantly uses slang and uses it incorrectly. You do not need to insert slang in every sentence, nor do you have to talk disrespectfully or speak to everyone like they're your best friend, saying like, hey, what up, and babe, and it's like, no, that's actually just creepy, weird, and unprofessional. But we'll get to that later. So anyway, if you are a non-native speaker, so you're not born in one of those 5 countries, technically you're a native speaker if you are from Jamaica, South Africa, etc. I'm not going to get into that, but again, you're not really considered as a native speaker with most companies. Emphasis on most companies. Yes, there are plenty of schools that will hire you and that understand that there are more, native speakers in the world than just, white people that are from America or from the UK. But being realistic, you will have more difficulty finding a job than someone that's American. And even for the companies that do hire people from Jamaica, South Africa, whatever other country, the reality is you're always going to play second fiddle to someone from the US, regardless of their race. Even myself, they're going to hire me over you in most circumstances. There are exceptions to every single rule. And of course, the degree is the main thing that you need in order to get this visa, work visa, in the first place. So now that we're off of that, I want to get into the real stuff. So when you're filling out these applications, you've probably realized, oh, everyone wants a native speaker. Everything says native speaker. Well, the reason why is kind of self-explanatory. Would you rather learn from someone who was born and raised speaking English or someone who had to teach themselves English? Now, part of you might say, well, yeah, duh, I'd rather learn from someone who's the native speaker. Well, Japan is the same way, but in this case, your goal is to sell yourself. So when you're applying for these jobs, you want to make sure that you emphasize that you speak English at a native fluent level. And also keep in mind that the fact that you're able to teach yourself another language says a lot. And it can also be, used as a pro for your students too. Most of the native speakers that are here in, I almost said in the US, that are here in Japan, they don't speak a second language. They don't even speak Japanese at a basic level. Yet they're teaching people how to speak another language. So they're giving advice on something that they can't even do themselves. Interesting. So that's actually something that you can use to make that work in your favor. Highlight that. The fact that you taught yourself, English, and you know the struggles and difficulties of it, and you can basically speak from experience when teaching them. So these are nice things that you can put down in your resume, and of course you want to emphasize on anything that you've done that deals with English. So for example, if you have certifications, and teaching English as a second language, any workshops that you've gone to, as well as any, professional teaching experience that you've had, whether it is volunteer work or, you know, a job that you had in your home country with teaching English. Please excuse my voice once again. It's hoarse. I've been recording all day. But anyway, off of that, you really want to highlight the fact that you speak English at a native level, basically. That's your goal. You want to stand out amongst a sea of applicants because they get tons of applicants from people that aren't native speakers. So why should they choose you? So again, just to recap this whole video, there's nothing you can really say to make make the employer hire you. All you can really do is put your best foot forward. Make sure that your English sounds good, that your resume looks nice, you have a good photo. Being attractive does help. I mean, you kind of can't help that. If you're ugly, you're ugly. You're attractive, you're attractive. Not much you can really say or do about that. But dressing nicely and appropriately by Japanese standards is a huge plus. Beyond just that, you really want to make sure that, your accent is kind of non-existent. You don't want to sound like a foreigner because they don't want someone who, when I say foreigner, I mean from an American perspective. You want to sound like a native speaker. If you do not, you have kind of guaranteed that you're not going to get that job. Do not contact the employer if it's been weeks, months, whatever. They're not interested in hiring you. I'm sorry you didn't get that job. You either failed the interview or your resume was so crappy that they were like, and we're not going to hire you. And then, of course, even if you do everything perfect, your English is good, whatever, a lot of places simply just don't hire non-native speakers. And I've kind of already explained why in other videos, but again, the concern in Japan is a matter of being perfect. They don't want to sound like they're Asian. They don't want to learn English from someone from Malaysia. Because even although Malaysians do speak English at a near native level, you guys do have an accent. And I'm picking on Malaysia in particular because I get a lot of emails from people that are from Malaysia. I'm sorry, I have friends from here, but I'm just being real. You still have an accent. It sounds Malaysian. I can tell that you're not an American. But anyway, that's not true for everyone though. Because like, for example, my friends sound 100% American. They say some things that I think are kind of strange, but I mean, I'm sure I sound strange too. But that's a whole nother story. I'm not getting into that. I'm not trying to be politically correct. I'm telling you how it goes. So, you can't really change their mind, their opinion. Either they're gonna hire you or they're not. Nothing you can do about it. I can't do anything about that even for myself. I have jobs that I apply to as a native speaker where people just simply aren't interested in hiring me for whatever reason. They might not want to hire a black person. They might already have found their applicant, whatever the case is. You may never know. Beyond that, you really want to make sure that you apply for jobs that are saying that they're looking for people that speak native fluently or native speakers. These jobs that have that listed obviously in their job description means that they're open to hiring people that aren't necessarily from one of those 5 countries. So you can be from, Germany, or you can be from Italy, or you can be from India or whatever, and you can easily apply for these jobs. There are also English schools here or international schools here that are based on other countries. So for example, there's Indian international schools, there's Korean international schools. These places will obviously hire other people, especially if you are from that country, you are Indian or you are Korean or whatever the case might be. Of course, the other option too is to make connections. If you have friends that are living in Japan that are from Turkey, ask them, hey, where do you work at? Who hired you? How did you get this job? More than likely they met someone else that's from Turkey living here, and their Turkish friend helped them get a job here. They sponsored their visa. You can most certainly go around it and do it that way. But again, keep in mind that eventually your visa is going to run out. So you either need to stay on good terms at your company and keep that job so that they can sponsor your visa, or you might end up getting sent back home or living here illegally and get caught up with the police. And you don't want to go through that. I will say that it's a lot easier to find work after you've already come to Japan to switch jobs, because then places that normally don't hire overseas applicants, you can get a part-time job and you can convince them to hire you to work full-time, or at least to pay you full-time pay while working part-time hours, or give you more money or whatever, and thus they can also help you sponsor your visa. So that is that. Again, don't forget the terms non-native speaker and native fluent speaker. Those are very important to know. Again, you want to highlight your skills. You want to highlight your ability, to speak English. You want to highlight the fact that you were able to teach yourself English, which is what a lot of people can't do. What better way to learn English than from someone who was able to teach themselves English? Again, a lot of native speakers, myself included. When I first started out teaching, I didn't know any Japanese. I was still able to get a job, but it was hypocritical of me at first. Because how am I teaching someone how to master English when I can't even master Japanese? And here you are, you speak 3 languages or 2 languages or whatever. That's amazing. So you can give real personal advice on how you learned English. So emphasize on these things. You don't want to sound desperate in your resume or in your cover letter, but you do want to sound like someone that they should trust, and you do want to sound like a good teacher. So that's that. I hope you found this video to be helpful. If you did, please give me a like and leave a comment down below. Otherwise, if you have not already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you have any other questions, video ideas, please also leave a comment or send me an email, and I would be more than happy to try my best to answer your question. I wish you the best of luck for finding a job here in Japan. Please check out my playlist on working in Japan, as well as my other previous videos for non-native speakers. I also have blog posts on these topics of working in Japan as well. As I said before, the easiest way to get work here if you're struggling to get an interview is to come here as a student and to find work that way. It's much easier. There's more job options. There's places that don't list online, and there's places that list online but just simply don't, do overseas applications. So you'll have more job options after you come to Japan. You don't have to get into a sham marriage. You don't have to have connections necessarily. So anyway, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it if you would also follow me on my social media accounts. I have an Instagram, a Snapchat, a Twitter, and a Facebook page as well. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.